I'm Miranda Vasquez, and I spent 14 years as a senior emergency dispatcher at the Riverside County Emergency Communication Center in Millbrook Falls, Oregon. Or at least I was, until I submitted my resignation 4 months ago. Most people in the department called me Mira during my time there, and I thought I'd heard every kind of human crisis imaginable through those headphones. But what I'm about to tell you about is the one call that made me question everything I thought I knew about reality itself, and ultimately led me to leave emergency services entirely. The call came in at 3:47 a.m. on October 23, 2023. By the time it ended 8 minutes later, I would never sleep soundly again, and 3 other people would be forever changed by what we heard that night. What happened during those 8 minutes shouldn't be possible, according to everything we know about physics, technology, and the nature of death itself, but it happened, and I have the recordings to prove it. Riverside County Emergency Communication Center sits in a reinforced concrete building on the outskirts of Millbrook Falls, about 40 miles southeast of Portland. It's a state-of-the-art facility that handles emergency calls for a coverage area spanning nearly 2,000 square miles of rural Oregon, including dense forests, mountain communities, and isolated farmland. During my 14 years there, I processed everything you can imagine in emergency services: fatal car accidents, domestic violence situations, medical emergencies, wildfire evacuations, missing persons cases, and every form of human tragedy that can unfold in rural America. I started at the center straight out of community college in 2009 when I was 22 years old and thought I could handle anything. Emergency dispatch seemed like the perfect career for someone who wanted to help people but preferred working behind the scenes rather than in the field. I was organized, calm under pressure, and had a natural ability to extract crucial information from panicked callers while simultaneously coordinating multiple emergency responders. The training was extensive and sobering. 6 months of classroom instruction covering emergency medical procedures, fire suppression protocols, law enforcement response guidelines, and crisis communication techniques. We learned to recognize the difference between a genuine emergency and a prank call, how to talk someone through CPR over the phone, and how to coordinate complex multi-agency responses to major incidents. Most importantly, we learned to maintain our emotional equilibrium while listening to some of the worst moments in people's lives. What they don't teach you in training is how the weight of those voices accumulates over the years. Every crying child, every panicked spouse, every person calling in their final moments becomes part of you in a way that's difficult to explain to people outside emergency services. You develop an emotional armor that allows you to function professionally during the calls, but the voices follow you home. They echo in your dreams and surface at unexpected moments during your daily life. By 2015, I had been promoted to senior dispatcher, which meant I handled the most complex calls and supervised newer staff during their first years on the job. I had talked people through childbirth when ambulances couldn't reach them in time, guided lost hikers to safety during blizzards, and coordinated responses to industrial accidents that required multiple fire departments and hazmat teams. I thought I had heard every variation of human crisis and emergency that rural Oregon could produce. The Riverside County Emergency Communication Center operates 24 hours a day, with a minimum of 4 dispatchers on duty during overnight shifts. Our equipment includes advanced digital recording systems that capture every incoming call for quality assurance and legal purposes, computer-aided dispatch systems that track all emergency vehicles in real time, and direct communication links to fire departments, police agencies, and medical services throughout our coverage area. Each dispatcher station is equipped with multiple monitors displaying maps, unit locations, call queues, and emergency protocols. We wear noise-canceling headsets that provide crystal clear audio quality and every conversation is automatically recorded and stored on secure servers. The technology is designed to ensure that no detail is lost, and that every call can be reviewed for training purposes or legal proceedings. During my years at the center, I had become known for my ability to handle the most difficult callers. Suicidal individuals, people experiencing psychotic episodes, panicked parents whose children were missing. I had developed techniques for establishing rapport quickly and extracting vital information, even when callers were barely coherent. My supervisors frequently assigned me to the overnight shifts because they knew I could manage the unique challenges that come with rural emergency response during the early morning hours. The territory we covered included some of Oregon's most remote and challenging terrain. Dense old-growth forests where cell phone coverage was spotty at best, mountain communities accessible only by narrow winding roads, and isolated properties where the nearest neighbor might be miles away. These geographic realities meant that emergency response times could be extended, and dispatchers often found themselves serving as the primary source of support and guidance for callers until help could arrive. I had handled calls from people trapped in their vehicles after accidents on remote mountain highways, coordinated search and rescue operations for hikers lost in the Cascade Range, and managed responses to wildfires that threatened to cut off entire communities from evacuation routes. Each situation required not just technical knowledge of emergency procedures, but the ability to remain calm and reassuring while people faced life-threatening circumstances with no immediate help available. Over the years, I had also learned to recognize the subtle audio cues that could indicate when someone was lying, when a situation was more dangerous than initially reported, or when additional resources would be needed. The quality of background noise, the cadence of someone's speech, even the way they breathed could provide crucial information about what was really happening at the scene of an emergency. One particularly challenging aspect of our coverage area was the number of elderly residents living alone in isolated locations. We regularly received calls from people experiencing medical emergencies with no family nearby and no way to get to a hospital on their own. I had talked dozens of people through heart attacks, strokes, and diabetic emergencies, while paramedics drove 20 or 30 miles to reach them. These calls required not just medical knowledge, but the ability to keep someone conscious and fighting for their life when they were terrified and alone. By October 2023, I had processed over 12,000 emergency calls during my career. I had been commended multiple times for my performance during major incidents, including a multi-fatality accident on Highway 26 that required coordinating responses from 6 different agencies, and a wildfire evacuation that involved relocating over 300 residents from mountain communities threatened by rapidly spreading flames. I thought I had developed immunity to being surprised or disturbed by anything I might hear during an emergency call. Fatal accidents, violent crimes, medical emergencies, natural disasters. I had heard the worst sounds that human beings can make when they're dying, terrified, or in unimaginable pain. I had learned to compartmentalize these experiences professionally while still maintaining the empathy and compassion necessary to provide effective emergency services. The psychological toll of this work is something that emergency services personnel rarely discuss openly, but it's a constant reality. We receive regular counseling and mental health support, and our department has protocols for ensuring that dispatchers take adequate time off after particularly traumatic calls. Despite these precautions, burnout and secondary trauma are common problems in our field. Many dispatchers don't last more than 5 or 6 years before the accumulated stress forces them to find other careers. I had always prided myself on my resilience and my ability to maintain professional objectivity regardless of what I heard during calls. Even the most disturbing situations, calls involving child abuse, murder, or suicide, I could process efficiently while providing appropriate emergency response. This emotional discipline had made me one of the most reliable dispatchers in our center and had earned me the respect of law enforcement officers, paramedics, and firefighters throughout our coverage area. The week leading up to October 23rd had been relatively quiet by our standards. A few medical calls, some minor traffic accidents, and a domestic disturbance that required police police intervention that didn't escalate to violence. The autumn weather had been mild, which typically means fewer emergency calls related to vehicle accidents or people getting stranded in remote locations. I was working the overnight shift, which generally handles fewer calls but often involves the most serious situations, since that's when people are most vulnerable and when help is furthest away. My shift at night started at 11 p.m. with a routine medical call: an elderly woman in the Cascade Foothills community experiencing chest pains. Standard response: ambulance dispatched, patient transported to Millbrook Falls General Hospital without complications. Around midnight, we handled a suspicious person report that turned out to be a lost delivery driver trying to find an address on an unmarked rural road. At 2:15 a.m., there was a single vehicle accident on Highway 18, where a driver fell asleep and went into a ditch. Minor injuries, vehicle towed. These were exactly the kinds of calls I had been handling for 14 years. Straightforward situations with clear protocols and predictable outcomes. Even when they involved serious injuries or property damage, they fell within the normal parameters of rural emergency services. People got hurt, people needed help, we coordinated the appropriate response, and the situation was resolved according to established procedures. At 3:30 a.m., I was updating case files and monitoring radio traffic from the few patrol units working overnight in our coverage area when the phone system indicated an incoming emergency call. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, which wasn't unusual since many people calling 911 are using cell phones or calling from locations outside their normal service area. I put on my headset, opened a new case file, and prepared to handle what I assumed would be another routine overnight emergency. The digital recording system automatically began capturing audio as soon as I answered the call. Every word, every sound, every ambient noise would be preserved with timestamp accuracy for later review. This was standard procedure, but in this case, it would become crucial evidence of something that shouldn't have been possible. Looking back now, I remember feeling completely confident and prepared as I reached for the answer button. I had handled thousands of emergency calls, coordinated responses to every type of crisis, and developed expertise in managing even the most challenging and traumatic situations. I thought I knew what to expect from human behavior during emergencies, and I believed that my training and experience had prepared me for anything a caller might tell me. I was wrong. What happened during the next 8 minutes would challenge everything I thought I understood about life, death, and the nature of reality itself. It would force me to question not just my career in emergency services, but fundamental assumptions about what's possible in our world, and it would leave me with recordings that still, 4 months later, no one has been able to explain. The call that came in at 3:47 a.m. on October 23, 2023, was about to change my life forever. At exactly 3:47 a.m., the emergency line lit up with an incoming call. I clicked to answer, expecting another routine overnight emergency. What I heard next would haunt me for the rest of my life. 911, what's your emergency? I said in my practiced, calm voice. The line was silent for several seconds. Then I heard what sounded like muffled sobbing. This wasn't unusual. Many callers are too distraught to speak immediately. I waited patiently, ready to guide them through whatever crisis they were facing. Hello, this is 911 Emergency Services. Can you tell me what's happening? A woman's voice came through, shaky and barely audible. My name is Rachel Thornfield. I'm calling from 1847 Pinecrest Road in Cedar Valley. Please, you have to help me. Something terrible has happened. I immediately began entering her information into our system. Pinecrest Road was in one of our most remote coverage areas, a narrow mountain road where houses were spread far apart among dense forests. The address populated on my screen, showing a residence registered to Marcus and Rachel Thornfield, both in their early 30s. Okay, Rachel, I have your location. Tell me what's happening. Are you injured? Do you need police, fire, or medical assistance? It's my husband, she whispered, her voice breaking. Marcus is, oh God, I think he's dead. There was so much blood. I found him in the basement about an hour ago. I immediately flagged the call as a potential homicide and began the protocol for dispatching both police and medical units. The nearest law enforcement was Sheriff Deputy James Morrison, who was approximately 25 minutes away. Paramedics would take even longer. Rachel, I need you to stay calm. Help is on the way. Are you safe right now? Is anyone else in the house with you? No, it's just me. I'm upstairs in our bedroom with the door locked. I'm so scared. There was so much blood around his head. I think someone killed him. Okay, you did the right thing by calling. Keep that door locked. Now, I need to ask you some questions to help the officers when they arrive. Did you see anyone else in or around your house? Any vehicles you didn't recognize? No, nothing like that. I went to bed around 11 p.m. and Marcus said he was going to work on something in the basement workshop. When I woke up around 2:30, he wasn't in bed, so I went downstairs to check on him. That's when I found him. As Rachel spoke, I noticed something strange about the audio quality. There seemed to be an unusual echo or resonance in her voice, almost like she was speaking from inside a large empty space, rather than a bedroom. Our equipment occasionally picked up acoustic anomalies, so I didn't think much of it initially. Rachel, you're doing great. The officers should be there in about 20 minutes. Can you describe exactly what you saw when you found Marcus? He was lying on the floor, next to his workbench. His head, there was a huge gash on the back of his head, and blood was everywhere. I checked for a pulse, but he was cold, so cold. I think he's been dead for hours. I continued gathering information while monitoring the GPS locations of responding units. Deputy Morrison was making good time on the mountain roads, but it would still be at least 15 minutes before he arrived. That's when things began to get strange. Rachel, I need you to stay on the line with me until the officers arrive. You're being very brave. Can you tell me if you heard anything unusual earlier tonight? Any sounds that might have woken you up? There was a long pause, then Rachel's voice came back, but it sounded different somehow, more distant, with that same strange echo becoming more pronounced. I did hear something, around midnight, I think. It sounded like Marcus was talking to someone downstairs, but that's impossible because no one else was here. I thought maybe he was on a phone call, but now, what did the voices sound like? Could you make out any words? That's the thing, Rachel said, and her voice now had an odd hollow quality that was definitely not normal. One of the voices sounded like Marcus, but the other voice sounded like me. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean it sounded like you, like my voice? But I was asleep upstairs. I remember being asleep, but I could hear someone downstairs talking in my voice. They were arguing about something, then there was a loud crash, and everything went quiet. This was getting very strange, but I had heard stranger things during crisis situations. Trauma can cause people to misremember events, or hear things that didn't happen. I continued with the protocol while keeping Rachel calm. Rachel, trauma can sometimes make us remember things differently than they actually happened. The important thing is that you're safe now. The deputy should be there in about 10 minutes. Then something happened that made my blood freeze. In the background of Rachel's call, faintly but clearly audible, I heard a man's voice say, "Rachel, where are you? I need your help down here." "Rachel," I said urgently, "did you hear that? Someone just called your name." "What? No, I didn't hear anything. It's completely quiet up here." But I had heard it clearly through the phone. A man's voice, calling from somewhere in the house, asking for Rachel's help. According to her story, her husband Marcus was dead in the basement. So who was calling her name? "Rachel, you need to listen to me very carefully. I just heard a man's voice through your phone calling your name from somewhere in your house. You said your husband was dead. Is there any possibility someone else is in your house?" "No, that's impossible. I would have heard them, and Marcus is definitely dead. I saw his body. He's been dead for hours. But even as she said this, I heard the voice again, clearer this time. Rachel, I need you to come downstairs. Something's wrong with the phone. I can't get through to 911. This time, I could tell that Rachel heard it too, because she let out a terrified gasp. That's Marcus's voice. But he's dead. I saw him. He's dead. Rachel, listen to me. Lock that bedroom door if it isn't already locked. Do not leave that room. There's someone else in your house, and we don't know who it is or what their intentions are. I immediately updated Deputy Morrison's dispatch, changing the call from a suspicious death to a possible home invasion, with the caller potentially in immediate danger. I also requested backup units, even though they were much further away. That's when the impossible began to happen. The voice I heard calling Rachel's name was definitely coming through her phone line, which meant it was in her immediate vicinity, but it was also being transmitted to our recording system, along with her voice. I looked at my audio monitors and could see both voice patterns registering simultaneously, Rachel's voice and the male voice calling her name. Rachel, I need you to describe exactly what you're hearing right now. He keeps calling my name. But Miranda, that's definitely Marcus's voice. I know my husband's voice, but he's dead. I saw his body. How can he be calling my name if he's dead? Then I heard something that made me question my own sanity. Through Rachel's phone, clear as day, I heard her own voice responding to Marcus. I'm upstairs, honey. I'll be right down. But Rachel was still on the line with me, whispering frantically. I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. How did my voice just answer him when I'm right here talking to you? Rachel, we have a very serious situation. Do not leave that room under any circumstances. Something is very wrong, and I need you to stay exactly where you are until the deputy arrives. I muted Rachel temporarily and called my supervisor, Janet Collins, who was monitoring from the main desk. Janet, I need you to listen to this call immediately. Something very strange is happening. Janet put on her headset and patched into the call. For the next several minutes, we both listened as what sounded like a normal domestic conversation took place in the background of Rachel's call. Marcus and Rachel discussing his basement workshop, her asking if he wanted coffee, him mentioning that he was having trouble with his project. Meanwhile, the real Rachel was on the phone with us, crying and insisting that she was locked in her bedroom and that her husband was dead in the basement. Janet, I whispered on our internal line, are you hearing this? I'm hearing it, but I don't understand it. How can we be getting two audio feeds from the same location? Then we heard something that made both of us go completely silent. Through Rachel's phone, we heard the sound of heavy footsteps climbing stairs, followed by Marcus's voice saying, Rachel, I thought you were coming downstairs. Why is the bedroom door locked? The real Rachel screamed. He's outside my door, but he's dead. I saw his body. We could hear someone trying the door handle, then knocking gently. Rachel, are you okay in there? You sound upset. Miranda, what do I do? How can he be at my door if he's dead in the basement? I was completely outside any protocol or training I had ever received. Nothing in my 14 years of emergency dispatch had prepared me for a situation where a dead person was apparently walking around and talking, but I had to keep Rachel safe and get help to her location. Rachel, do not open that door. Deputy Morrison is almost there. Stay on the line with me. That's when I heard Marcus's voice through the phone, but this time he sounded confused and scared. Rachel, there's something wrong. I went down to the basement, and there's someone down there who looks exactly like me. He's lying on the floor, and there's blood everywhere. I think someone broke into our house and killed someone who looks like me. Janet and I looked at each other in disbelief. We were listening to a man who was apparently looking at his own dead body and not recognizing it as himself. The situation became even more surreal when we heard Rachel's voice from downstairs calling up Marcus. Are you okay up there? You sound scared. But the real Rachel was still on the phone with us. That's my voice again. How is my voice downstairs when I'm up here? For the next few minutes, we listened to what sounded like two people having a conversation about finding a dead body in their basement, both using the voices of Marcus and Rachel Thornfield. Meanwhile, The real Rachel remained locked in her bedroom, becoming increasingly hysterical. "Janet," I said on our internal line, "we need to review our equipment. This has to be some kind of technical malfunction." But even as I said it, I knew our equipment was functioning normally. The voice patterns were clean, the audio quality was perfect, and everything was being recorded with digital clarity. Whatever was happening in that house was somehow generating multiple, simultaneous conversations involving the same two people. Deputy Morrison finally arrived at 4:12 a.m., 25 minutes after the initial call. We had him on radio as he approached the house. "Dispatch, I'm at 1847 Pinecrest Road. The house appears to be quiet. There's one vehicle in the driveway, lights on in an upstairs window. I'm approaching the front door. Deputy Morrison, be extremely careful. We have a very unusual situation." The caller reports finding her husband dead in the basement, but we've been hearing voices that sound like both the caller and her deceased husband having conversations throughout the house. "Copy that, dispatch. That's unusual. I'm at the front door now." We listened as Deputy Morrison knocked and announced himself. Through Rachel's phone, we heard his knocking and his voice calling Sheriff's Department. "Mrs. Thornfield, this is Deputy Morrison responding to your 911 call." The real